Some crimes leave us disturbed, some leave us angry, but a few leave us questioning humanity itself. Today, we uncover one of the darkest and most disturbing cases of child abuse and murder in American history, the tragic story of 16-year-old Sylvia Likens. Video contains disturbing content, including descriptions of abuse and violence. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Let's start. Imagine leaving your child with a trusted caregiver, only to discover months later that they had been subjected to unimaginable cruelty. In a house full of witnesses, yet no one stopped it. How could this happen? How could an entire neighborhood fail a helpless child? And what happened to the people responsible? Sylvia Marie Likens was born January 3, 1949, in Lebanon, Indiana. She was a sweet, shy teenager, the middle child of 5 siblings. Her parents, Lester and Betty Likens, were carnival workers. They traveled a lot, trying to make ends meet. In the summer of 1965, Sylvia and her sister Jenny were left in the care of a woman named Gertrude Baniszewski. Baniszewski had a turbulent personal life marked by multiple marriages and relationships, often tangled with instability and abuse. Gertrude experienced considerable hardship throughout her life, witnessing her father's death at a young age, enduring poverty during the Depression, and facing abusive partners. Due to this, she became cruel. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, $20 a week for food, shelter, and care. Nobody imagined that decision would become a death sentence. At first it was small, shouting, slapping. But when Sylvia's parents fell behind on payments, the punishment intensified. Gertrude, a 37-year-old mother of 7, turned from a caregiver into a sadistic abuser. She began beating Sylvia with paddles, forcing her to do humiliating chores, and denying her food. Cigarette burns followed. Soon, her own children, and even neighborhood kids, were encouraged to join in the torment. It became a horrifying spectacle of cruelty, with Sylvia as the scapegoat. Baniszewski crossed all the limits of torture. She used boiling water on Sylvia, causing painful burns on her skin. On some occasions, she was forced to eat spoiled food and her own waste. Gertrude and other children forced her to undress and ridiculed her in front of others. She was falsely accused of being promiscuous and had a degrading message burned into her stomach. Objects were forced into her body in acts of sexual humiliation. By October, Sylvia was frail, malnourished, covered in sores, and unable to walk. She was kept in the basement, starved, beaten, mocked. On October 26, 1965, she died from brain swelling, shock, and severe malnutrition. Her last words, reportedly whispered, were, "I'm going to die, I can tell." Gertrude called the police herself, claiming Sylvia had run away and returned with injuries, and later died. Initial police response officers arrived expecting a natural or accidental death, but were immediately suspicious. Signs of foul play. Sylvia's body was emaciated, bruised, and burned. The words, "I am a prostitute and proud of it," were crudely carved into her abdomen. Numerous burns, cuts, and deep injuries were visible. Statements and inconsistencies. Gertrude and her children gave conflicting accounts of what happened. Initially, they claimed Sylvia had fallen or harmed herself. Neighbor children who were in the house during the abuse started revealing details. Key breakthrough. Police separated the children for questioning, which unraveled the truth. Jenny Likens, Sylvia's sister, also living in the home, bravely confided to police. If you get me out of here, I'll tell you everything. Her testimony exposed the months-long torture and the involvement of multiple children. The case shook Indiana and the nation. Within days, Gertrude Baniszewski, her daughter Paula, her son John, and 3 neighborhood youths were arrested. The trial revealed months of calculated torture. Many locals gathered to witness the trial, expressing anger and disbelief. The case received extensive media coverage, sparking debates about child welfare, neglect, and community responsibility, and a neighborhood that ignored the screams of a dying child. Gertrude was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder, but served only 20 years before being paroled. This sparked public outrage due to the nature of her crime. Following her release, she lived under the name Nadine Van Vossen in Loa City. She later claimed she couldn't remember the crime. Others involved received lesser sentences, some just a few years. But God punished her with illness. Gertrude Baniszewski died on June 16, 1990, at the age of 60, from lung cancer. Sylvia's story forced America to confront a brutal truth. Child abuse often hides in plain sight. Her death led to reforms in child welfare laws. At the time, Indiana had very few formal mechanisms for citizens or authorities to report suspected child abuse. After the case, Indiana introduced mandatory reporting laws requiring teachers, doctors, social workers, and other professionals to report any suspicion of child abuse or neglect. These laws included penalties for failing to report suspected abuse, improved foster care, and child placement regulations. Sylvia and her sister were left in Gertrude Baniszewski's care, informally, with little oversight. Following the case, Indiana began tightening foster placement requirements, including background checks for guardians, more frequent welfare checks on children placed outside their homes, verification of living conditions before approval. While changes started in Indiana, the case became a national reference point. The Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, of 1974, a federal law, was influenced by public outrage from cases like Sylvia's. It provided federal funding for child protective services. The case highlighted how neighbors and teachers saw signs of Sylvia's abuse but failed to intervene. Educational campaigns were launched in the following years to teach citizens the see something, say something approach for suspected abuse. In 2001, a memorial was placed at the site of the crime. It reads, "This is in memory of a young girl who died through no fault of her own." Sylvia Likens didn't have to die. Her story is a reminder that silence can be deadly. If you ever suspect a child is being abused, speak up. Don't wait for someone else to act.
You think about this case. Should her killers have faced the death penalty? Were 20 years enough for Gertrude Baniszewski? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story important, subscribe to stay updated on more true crime cases, where we remember the victims, not glorify the killers.